The Austin Allegro, a car that's been much maligned throughout its more than 50 years around now. And yet I think that's slowly starting to change. Whenever I've taken this to shows or just even to a trip down the shops, there's always been somebody coming up with something nice to say about it. And I think the reason for that isn't necessarily the car itself, but because it's from a different era. A time where things were more straightforward. There was no social media to worry about, there was no AI, all that sort of stuff. And I'm going to demonstrate, hopefully, how simple this lovely little car is by giving it a service. It's been a year since its last one, so the plan is to do an oil and filter change, probably the air filter as well, and also check the spark plugs, and also check the wax all underneath the car to make sure it's all nicely protected for the rest of the year. Here we go, so I've got the car on ramp so I can access underneath it nice and clearly. This is the oil that I'm using. Classic Pistonese 20W50 Miller's oil. So let's get underneath it and let's hopefully get this oil released nice and easily. Right, so as you can see, I put a cardboard sheet down just to make things a bit more comfortable when I'm lying down under the car, and also to not make a mess of the drive if something spills. So in terms of what we're doing first, we have to release the sump, which is just here. That bottom plug just there is the sump drain. So that's where the oil's going to come from. And then just need to get a socket around that, and hopefully it's not going to be done up too tightly. So let's go. I'm a twat. The oil is here. Well, you learn new things, don't you? So let's try again. This time with a bit more competency. But then again, if you're watching this channel and expecting competency, well, you clearly don't know me well enough, do you? Let's try again. Right, I'm quite annoyed now. I've tugged and heaved at that sump. I've caked it in WD-40 and it just won't budge. It's just been absolutely pulled on. What doesn't help is I haven't got a socket big enough, so I've had to try using an adjustable. I think it's a 22mm, whereas the biggest socket I've got is 21, so that's really annoying. So at the moment, I'm stuck. So I'm going to do another job while it's up on the stands. I'm going to have a good look at the wax oil under the car and see how that is. Now this came up on the MOT as an advisory, and something which is helpful for having MOT is it will spot things like this for you. So there is a bit of rust there, nothing that's too serious, nothing that wax oil won't deal with. So I'm going to rub that back just with a bit of rough paper, give it a good spray, and that should hopefully keep that protected for another year. I don't know how well you can see under here, but the wax oil's done its job. A bit there that I've missed, so I'll deal with that in a second. But there's only been the odd little patch to touch up, really. This is why it's good to check this every year before winter, to make sure that there's nothing underneath that's going to cause you problems in the future. Because if you neglect rust on old cars, as you guys will know, particularly on structural parts like floor pans, eventually expensive welding will be needed and they won't be safe to drive either. So that's why it's key that you keep these under control, and I'm happy with that. Only a few minor things to do, so at least that's something I've managed to achieve. That's the bit that I showed you earlier that was rusty. If it decides to focus, come on, there you go. Gone all the way along here. You want to let it dry. I might do a second coat on this later this afternoon, because this was the bit obviously that the MOT man picked up. Again, it was minor, but I'm glad that I've got a thorough MOT guy that checks on this. And you can see, just looking down here, it's all very tidy. It doesn't really want to show us, it's not going to focus. There we go. Yeah, particularly because this lives outside all year, you want to make sure that it's all good. And it is. So yeah, I can say that's a job well done. So another job I can do is I can check the condition of the air filter, and all you got to do is just pull it off that pipe, disconnect the two, or loosen the two wing nuts there, and that should be nice and simple. And then prise off the top here using a screwdriver, and we'll have a look and see what the air filter looks like. So just prise the top of that off, just a bit of screwdriver action, and getting the air filter out, and you can see that that is a pretty manky piece of kit. So I think it's time for a new one in there. I'll give the inside of it a bit of a wipe down as well, just with some paper towel. Might as well while I'm in there. The reason why I'm inside is because it started raining, but luckily I can still do this job inside. And just for a comparison, I don't think we need to say which one is the new air filter, do we? The engine runs really sweetly anyway, but that'll probably make it run even sweeter. There we go, that's all in now. Just got to clip the cover back on and then put it back on the car. Right, that's back on. Now I think it'd be a good chance to just have a little check on the spark plugs, see how they are. Now the important thing when you do spark plugs is that you take one out at a time, because that way you don't miss up the HT lead order. Because the HT leads, as you can see here, they have to be arranged a certain way. So if I took off all these HT leads like that, very quickly I'd forget which order they went back in. So I'm going to do number 1 first, take that out, give it a clean and an inspection, then number 2, then number 3, and then number 4. That way I don't miss up any order. Now that is a really healthy looking plug. It's not damaged in any way, and the colour's just right, it's grey. Just get it over there we go. So just a bit of a clean, and I think that'll be absolutely just fine. That's number 1. I'm going to put some copper slip round this bit here just to make sure it's not going to get stuck in the engine, because you don't want spark plug stuck in your engine block, because that's a right ball egg to sort out. So a quick scrub, and I'm going to use, where's it gone? That's what I'm going to use, that little brass spark plug scrubbing brush, and I'll do the same with the other ones. So that's all the spark plugs done. They all look the same pretty much as number 1. There was no black stutter anywhere. It was a nice nice grey colour. So give them a clean, lubricated them, the thread with a bit of copper slip so they don't get stuck. The leads are in the right order. So apart from the oil, that's every single job done that I wanted to do on the car. So I'll come back to this either later on today, because I know where I can find some bigger socket sets or bigger sockets, or it could be in a couple of days I come back to this. But so far so good, looking really nice and healthy, and the new air filter definitely was a good job that I was replacing that. So I'll see you guys either in a second, well you will in a second, or for me either in a few hours or in a few days. There we go, so it's a few hours later. The oil's coming out. I managed to get to 24mm and used a ring spanner to get it out, and that says 22, it's that end. There we go. So that's what got it off in the end. A few little bits of filings on the plug, but that doesn't matter, we can just wipe those off. Oil's black, so it definitely needs the change, but it's been used a lot, that's why. So let's just move it up a little bit. But yeah, that was a bit of an unpleasant job, but I've went away and got the right spanner. Ring spanner was the best thing I could use, so yeah, at least that's done now. There's the sump plug. Copper washer still looks pretty good on that, but just as a bit of extra security, I put some PTFE tape around it as well. That just gives it an extra good seal. So this could very well be, I mean it didn't leak oil anyway, but this could continue to be the only A series in the world that doesn't leak any oil. That's a pretty strong claim I'm having to fame there, so we'll see how well that works when we get this back in again. Right, the next job is going to be to get off the oil filter, which is just there, the big round thing. Hopefully that shouldn't be too much of a problem, so we'll see. Right, the oil filter's off now. Doesn't help that it's windy, but hey ho, we can manage. So, time to tighten the sump up now. I've got it in, I've got it started, so I just need to, where are you sump? There you go, just got to wind it in properly now. I think I can probably move away this pan of oil now. Oil doesn't look too bad, but obviously it's been used for a year, it's black, so it does need changing. Right, so here's the new filter. So always make sure that you smear a bit of oil just around the seal there, so it seals it up nice and smooth and nice and tight for the year. Right, there's the brand new oil filter on. put it on hand tight, and then just to be safe I've nipped it up about half, 2/3 of a turn with the oil filter tool. So next job is to fill it up with new oil, and before I do that just go check the book to make sure that I know how much to take so I don't overfill it. As you can see in the general data it says oil capacity 4.8 litres, and I've got a 5 litre can there, so we should be okay with that. So let's get it in. So the oil's draining slowly through. You don't want to put oil in too quickly in one of these, and that's why it's always good to check the capacity of the engine before you start pouring the oil in. You don't want to put too much in, otherwise it then means you've got to undo the sump and drain a bit of it out again. That's just a faff. Also as well, the reason why this takes so much oil is because you're not just filling up the engine with this, you're filling up the gearbox as well, because it's a transverse engine, because it's mounted sideways rather than front to back. So that's an advantage of this, is that it means that something which would usually be a separate maintenance task, i.e. draining the gearbox, can be done alongside the engine. It does mean that you need more oil, but I've got enough oil on me. I've got the spare oil there just in case, but I'm pretty much nearly there. Keep checking it on the dipstick, and then once I've got it up to quite a high level, just below max I would say, I'm then going to start the engine, because you've then got to have the filter absorb the oil as well. You've got to have that go into the new filter, and that will get the level down a little bit, so you have to recheck the level when you've done that. When you're filling up your oil, it's also a good idea just to check to make sure nothing's coming out of the sump plug or the oil filter. So that looks really dry to me, and the filter, if you listen carefully you can hear the oil working its way down actually. But yeah, there's nothing dripping from there either, but it's always good just to double check and make sure. Right, the dipstick's on the max now, so now it's time to start it up. Make sure the oil pressure light goes out and allow the oil filter to take on the new oil load. Let's go. There we go. Oh no, hang on. Yeah, on and then off again. Lovely. So run it up a little bit, and then we'll dip it again. Turn the choke down a little bit. And we'll dip it again, and we'll see how much we need to put in just to make it up. I've also got the car back on level ground, because that will give you a more accurate reading as well. So I'll just tidy a few things up, and then I'll give it another read on the dipstick. There we go, jobs are good and nothing's leaking, everything's all normal. So yeah, successful day. Another major job ticked off the Allegro. Won't need to do that for another year now. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Please remember to be a channel member. Would help out our channel enormously. It'd be absolutely fantastic if you could do that. You'll be able to get videos like this early, and some behind the scenes stuff that I'll be planning quite soon. So thank you very much everybody. Look after yourselves and keep enjoying summer. Take care.